Alright, hey guys, it's Frog Slicer. If you had to guess which deck I would be talking about today, what would you guess? Go ahead and write in the comments which deck you think I want to talk about. I'm going to be talking about my Gottoms Frogs deck again. This is going to be more of a demonstration or an explanation of the combos. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. So this is the obvious part. We're going to start with the basics in case people don't understand the basic combo. You're trying to get Subtoad into play. He says tribute a monster up to infinity times per turn to special summon a frog from your deck. So he himself isn't a frog, so that's something to be mindful of. But the point is you get a Subtoad out and any other monster, and you tribute to search your deck for a frog. I guess I'll show it a little bit. You search your deck for a frog, so you tribute it, search your deck for a frog, tribute that, search your deck for a frog, and the point is you get all your frogs in your grave. So you're not just doing like the original Frog FTK stuff. What you're doing is taking out all the junk frogs like Flip Flop Frog, which do have uses, especially for the solid board state we're trying to end on, which I'll get to later. But they're also good for the games where you don't get to combo, you get to do control plays. So it's really important to have these cards. But yeah, so the basic gist of it is that you're going to take out every frog in your deck that isn't your poison draw frogs and your swap frogs. I'm sure I have some in here somewhere. Swap frog. So yeah, that's the base of it. So if you want to just empty your deck, you do that. Whatever. That doesn't really get you anywhere here. But what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to get a Fishborg Blaster plus a Subtoad. Usually you have to. The way you get this engrave is you use a swap frog you searched for, and use its second effect to discard a water to special summon itself, just to get this engrave. But all you're doing is you're taking cards in your hand, you're discarding them to special summon Fishborg from your grave, and then you are going to sack that for a poison draw, then discard another card in your hand to special summon it back, and then sack it for the Swap Frog I just found. And then you use Swap Frog's effect, which normally when you summon him, you're sending a frog from your deck. It doesn't have to send a frog, it can send a Subtoad who is not a frog, he's a toad. But normally you send from the deck, so here you're going to send from the field. So this is the base combo is with Fishborg Blaster and Subtoad, you're able to get this board. When he comes into play, you're going to target Poison Draw with his send effect. This would miss timing in a lot of situations, like if you sack it to Subtoad, it misses timing, so you need to shoot it with Swap Frog's send effect. So he comes into play, you send the Poison Draw, and then you draw a card. So now you have, some card in your hand, and you're able to discard this to special summon it back. Then you sack the Swap Frog and the Fishborg for another Poison Draw and another Swap Frog. So, you get to cycles. You're going to end up discarding this card you drew unless it's something that extends your combo. And that's the point. You want all the cards in your deck that you draw to be gas, to extend your combo. So all the dead cards you would be drawing are like the frogs that you don't want to play. Right? So that's the base combo. Pretty simple. Things get a good bit more complicated pretty fast. So one thing I wanted to talk about is what I consider like the priority or like the draw hierarchy, or I guess the extender hierarchy, I guess is a better way to talk about it. So I have this organized a little bit, but it's something like this. So these are like your different like clusters of plays. So Pot of Avarice is standalone insanely good. It just says you send back 5 monsters from your grave to your deck, draw 2 cards. So Pot of Greed if you meet the condition. And here it's extending your draw combo with Poison Draw and Swap Frog. So not only do you draw 2 cards, but you also get to cycle 3 cards, assuming you don't draw any frogs. These 2 cards together, Salvage plus Marave Greed, they're like a light Pot of Avarice. And the light is actually better in most circumstances. You have to have, I believe you have to have 4 cards in deck for Pot of Avarice to be higher value or a higher percentage chance of not drawing a single frog. Once you have 4 cards in your deck and you're sending back frogs, the chance gets really high. You're looking at like a 90% chance. But when you have more than 3 or 4 cards in your deck, then you want to just go ahead and use these 2 cards together in tandem as if they were a Pot of Avarice whenever you can. So that's how we're going to start off this hierarchy. When you can, you want to salvage for both a swap and poison draw that you've used. sometimes, like say you happen to have like 2 poison draws in your deck and no swap frogs in your deck, then you would want to like take 2 swaps from your grave with salvage and put them back. But I found almost always it's correct to just do poison draw and swap frog. Like you want to be mindful, you don't just mindlessly grab these 2. But usually this is what you're going for. Because yeah, you're going to salvage, you're going to add these 2 to your hand, so +1. You're going to Moray of Greed to shuffle them back to draw 3, so that's +0. So you get a +1 overall, just like Pot of Avarice. And now you get one more cycle worth of draw to extend your draw by 1. So these cards in tandem, that's 6 copies of extenders, and of course either of these can fix different situations. Like if you have cards in your hand you can't discard, like your Imperial Iron Wall, or placeholders like Upstart Goblin, you don't want to just blindly play them. You don't want to draw into a frog, so you're trying to hold these as long as possible until the only things you can draw are like gas spells or like an Exodius to keep you going. So in situations where you just need something to discard to Fishborg Blaster, you're going to use salvage to get back any frogs. If I can, I'll usually get back Substitoads, because in case you fail for some reason, they can crow you or something. Then you want to have a Substoad in hand for situations where you're going to have to pass turn. You don't combo, and then they break your weak board that you weren't prepared for. Next turn, you have Treeborn Frog plus Substitoad, you can try again. Another reason I like Substitoad is because when you're sending back with Exodius, it's hard to... You want to get those out of the grave when you send with Exodius, because you don't want to draw frogs. You don't want to fill your deck with more dead draws, because you only have so many poison draw frogs that you get to do. So that's standalone good, and then Moray of Greed is obviously like good at declunking hands that draw too many frogs before you get to do your Fishborg Substitoad stuff. And in case you happen to, pretty unluckily, maybe Pot of Avarice draws you 2 frogs, Moray of Greed can fix situations like that. So standalone, these cards do their thing, but if you can, you want to be so on track with your goal that you can do them together, because it really extends. It really gives you so much cushioning for not bricking. And then down the hierarchy, so this is hierarchy number 1. If you can, if you, like say you have a graveyard full of frogs, which I guess, you know what, that kind of puts Upstart up here in the number 1 of the hierarchy, but it depends on the situation. So if the situation is every frog is out of your deck, there's only gas, then yeah, you want to go ahead and Upstart Goblin before you salvage a Moray. And if you don't have both of these together, you want to go ahead and Pot of Avarice. But in all the situations, it's only because you're trying to get more poison draw, swap frog draws. So yeah, so that's first priority, second priority, and third priority is Exodius. In case you don't know what he does, the condition to summon him is to send as a cost every single monster in your deck to your from your grave to the top of your deck, or shuffled into your deck. So you want to make sure that you get everything important out. Like, you're not going to summon an Exodius until the Fishborg you have in your grave is safely out of your grave, so you want him in play. And that's why I have Thunder Dragon in here. You could Exodius early, especially if you can like get something really aggressive where you can do Substitoad and start dropping your stuff, and you don't have any of these. So you have Substitoad and you're able to get +1 monsters, and you're able to get every frog out of your deck. You don't want to just slam an Exodius to like extend, because he only really does anything to extend if you have both Fishborg and Thunder Dragon. In a situation like that, I would basically almost always default to like playing a control style game, or I would fish, I would maybe, dig however you can. But you're going to want to slam Exodius last, and ideally only once you've drawn Fishborg, have been able to get a Fishborg in grave, and have a Thunder Dragon in circulation. Because Exodius, refuels, ideally, you have all 3 swaps and all 3 poison draw frogs in your grave, so that when you summon Exodius, you can use your hand advantage, which Thunder Dragon gives you. So you have Thunder Dragon in grave. You discard one of the 3 Thunder Dragons to summon the Fishborg. So now you have 2 Thunder Dragons in grave, 1 in hand. You summon Exodius with Fishborg in play. So now it's going to send back everything but Fishborg. And then you go ahead and discard that Thunder Dragon to add those 2 Thunder Dragons back to your end right away. So now you have a monster you can sack for a poison draw, another monster you can sack for a poison draw, and then a Thunder Dragon you can sack for a poison draw. So you can just go Substitoad, poison draw, poison draw, poison draw. And then your last card would just be a Fishborg, and then you ideally you have something else you can discard. And you just go Swap Frog, draw a card, send a poison, draw a card. And then you sack that swap frog for another swap frog, and you're doing it one at a time, and you're thinning your deck of frogs as much as possible before you hit a draw. So you took out all your poison draws, and then you search for the first swap frog. The only frog you should be able to draw in that situation would be one of the two swap frogs. So the unluckiest thing that can happen to you in that situation is you draw a single swap frog, in which case you do another swap frog, you pull out the last one, and then you could go for the -1, bounce it to discard the swap frog you drew to send the third poison draw. So we'll get there. I'll do a demonstration. This situation might come up, it may not, but there's a bunch of different situations. It's hard to explain. But the point is, if you have like these three cards together, Exodius doesn't do much by himself. He kind of extends, but usually he kind of stops what you're doing unless you have these three cards. But if you do have these three cards, then Exodius is a super plus because you're getting a +0 summoning in play, so you're able to use him with Substitute to get another frog. You're getting a +1 because you're going to get a +1 card advantage with Thunder Dragon. And then, of course, you get more draws, dig more, and ideally draw more gas. So in all these situations, you're trying to upstart only when you have every single frog taken out of your deck. And if you're cool, you're able to get the substitutes out too, but that just depends on usually how weak your draw was that you had to play that way. But yeah, and then the worst case scenario is you have to just upstart with your opening hand. Like, just digging for a swap frog. Say you have Substitute and Fishborg Blaster in your hand. That seems pretty good, but without a discard outlet, you'd have to just like set the Fishborg or like discard to end a turn Fishborg, and then turn 2, summon the Substitute, get the Fishborg. So in those situations, you just go ahead and use your upstart and fish for whatever it is you may need. In that case, it'd be like a 1-for-1 Foolish Burial, Swap Frog, maybe even another Substitute. You could play like a grindier game, stuff like that. But yeah, so this is an extender insofar as you take everything out. And then this isn't quite lowest priority. This is technically highest priority. You're not doing any of this unless you've done Poison Draw and Swap as much as you possibly can. There is a bit of a caveat because it's not just doing as much as you can. You don't want to discard an Exodius to get one more draw. You're not trying to discard an Exodius to maybe draw like your second Fishborg. Like that's just not what you're trying to do. So you need to be mindful of what cards you have in your hand. So if you have an idea of what your priority of extenders is, then you can look at your hand and say, okay, well, there's a bunch of garbage in my hand. I can discard an extra Fishborg or my Plague Spreader Zombie and just go ahead and go as wide as you can with poison draws. And then you do the accordion, like I said in another video. You poison draw as wide as you can, and then you shrink it with the swap frogs, and that takes the poison draws out, so you have a lower chance of drawing them. Drawing swap frog doesn't hurt as bad as drawing poison draw. You can do swaps bounce, especially with Fishborg. You can float an extra normal summon by bouncing swap frog, discard it to Fishborg Blaster. It's exactly the same thing as just sacking the Fishborg. Sorry, sacking the swap frog, sacking the Fishborg in that situation is exactly the same thing. But now you have a floating extra normal summon. So usually in those situations, I'll do that as soon as I can. Maybe that's not correct, like for playing around DD Crow or whatever. But you want to have that extra normal floating because you never know when you'll need it. But yeah, so in a situation where you drew a poison draw, you might just want to go ahead and use your extra normal summon on the poison draw right there. Because it's like you'd only want to do it in the middle of your chain. It's hard to explain. If you playtest the deck enough, you would understand. But yeah, so the typical situation is you have a lot of gas in your hand, and you're going to be doing the poison loop as minimally as possible, where you're maximizing your odds of drawing the cards you don't want to draw, because the cards in your hand are good. So you just discard one card to do the poison draw, swap frog thing, maximize your chances of drawing, because these are the only two you'd have out, and then hopefully you don't, but if you do, you would just discard that and do it one at a time, just cycle one at a time. So poison draw, swap, draw a card, sack this for a poison draw, discard the card you drew or a worse card, get the swap frog, and just do it again. Do it one at a time. If your hand's bad, like I said, or just a bunch of duds, then you can go as wide as you can and summon. I don't typically like to do this. What I usually do is I'll do 2 poison draw frogs. So I'll go poison draw. Let's go ahead and search the other one. It's a video after all. So what I like to do is do 2 poison draw frogs and then bring out the swap frog. So again, you have to discard a card every time with Fishborg Blaster and have Substitute in play, which I guess I can also just have a pretend board to look at. But yeah, in this situation, you'd have Substitoad, and you would spend your cards just fishborging over and over again to get this board. And then in your deck, you're going to have one Poison Draw Frog and two Swap Frogs, and ideally every other frog in the grave. So in here, you start collapsing, do this, draw a random card, and then do this for another Swap Frog, and draw another card, and then end on a Poison Draw. You would once the last Swap Frog comes out, you send this, draw a card, and then you end on a Poison Draw. And if you do it that way, then what you end up with is you'll have 5 frogs in your grave. So you'll have a Poison Draw that's ready to be shot. You'll do a Pot of Avarice, which is pretty ideal. This feels like it's highest on the hierarchy because it's not always that you have these two. But yeah, say you'll have a Pot of Avarice. So you want to send back 3 Swap Frogs, 2 Poison Draw, and then ideally draw none of them. Now you have a Poison Draw already in play, and your deck is filled with Poison Draws and Swap Frogs. In that situation, where if you have 2 Poison Draws in deck and 3 Swap Frogs, then you can go full accordion and bring out all 3, depending on if you have the good cards in hand to discard. So Thunder Dragon's a really great way. And, there's plenty of like +1s with salvage and stuff. Then you want to go full accordion. So you only go as far as to kind of always end on a Poison Draw Frog. But if you have all 3 swaps in deck, then you want to go just bring out all 3 Poison Draw Frogs, bring in the Swap Frog, and then shrink down that way. Sack this, bring in a new one, shrink down that way. And in that case, you would end with a Swap Frog and 3 Poison Draws with 2 swaps in grave. Which is also another ideal. If you need to extend with a second Pot of Avarice, that's another ideal Pot of Avarice send back. And another thing that's really good about this is since you have Pot of Avarice higher on the hierarchy than Exodius, what you would do is you would, if you had both of these in your hand, you would Pot of Avarice, and that's maximizing your odds of hitting the Thunder Dragon. But when you do Exodius, it's ideal, and it doesn't always happen, but it's ideal to have all 6 Poison Draw and Swap in your grave. So if you end on this board, you did the Pot of Avarice the way I said, now you can go ahead and return the swap to the hand, discard it for Fishborg, and in your grave, you should have all 6 of these. So then when you summon Exodius, the Fishborg is already out, and Exodius sends back, so you can do full accordion again. And that's just maximizing your odds, or that's minimizing your odds of drawing any of these frogs. And that's all that this entire explanation has been about, is the way to prioritize these cards to maximize your good draws, to actually draw spells that keep you going. Alright, so that was a lot. Pause and rewind if you have to. Ask me questions, I'm happy to answer them. So this is all of the pre-stable board that I said in the beginning of the video. The pre-stable board draw. There are some things to keep in mind. A big one is whether or not to send every single frog to your grave. So let's go ahead and clear this up a little bit. The main struggle with this deck is you don't necessarily know if you're going to get there, right? If you open a 1-for-1, it's pretty hard not to get there. Because 1-for-1 can either be a Substitoad or a Fishborg, and then you have to draw a 1-for-1 with both a Fishborg, with either Fishborg or Substitoad to get the piece you need. So the odds are pretty high in that situation. But if all you can do is say like special summon a swap and then have a Substitoad, like this isn't guaranteed to combo. You can, in this situation, send every frog from your deck to your grave. And then what? And then what is, you need to know what else is in your hand, right? If you send every Poison Draw and every Swap Frog, then in those situations, you'd be able to get the other 2 Substitoads out of your deck. So that's nice. This one came down. When you special summoned it, you probably sent a Substitoad. Whatever. So the point is, in this situation, you don't have a Fishborg Blaster. So you need to look at your hand without a Fishborg Blaster. Because if you're able to special summon the Swap Frog, and the water you discarded wasn't a Fishborg, then it was a frog. The other cards in your hand need to be very specific for me to say, do send the dupe frog. So obviously it depends on the matchup. Like if I was playing against Glads, first of all, it depends on their back row, but we're not going to go into matchups. Almost always I'll just stick with one dupe frog. So if my hand isn't just like double Pot of Avarice with, you know, this setup, if I have a Pot of Avarice, then I'll send every frog, including the dupe frog. Because if I'm feeling, you know, afraid, I can just send back a dupe frog with Pot of Avarice. The point is, you might fail. You don't have Fishborg. You're not able to draw 3 times until you draw one of your 9 extenders. So if you don't have an extender in hand, like say you have a Moray of Greed or something and you're banking on, I don't know, just drawing, but you don't want to use your Moray of Greed until you've thinned your deck of useless frogs, you want to keep a dupe in deck. Worst case scenario, your hand doesn't get there. You can just end on the soft dupe block. So ideally, your top deck would be good because you took every frog out of your deck, and then hey, you're going to top deck a Pot of Avarice or an Exodius or whatever. So the important thing about this situation is if you don't have a Fishborg, Exodius is automatically weaker, but in a weird way. So what you're able to do is Exodius isn't going to draw you more cards because you don't have a way to expand your board with Fishborg, but he is an extra monster. So you can do like a harder dupe block. It's definitely a harder dupe block to break by using your +1 with Swap Frog to the board, +1 monster to the board, to get a dupe frog, and then use Exodius to search for the other dupe frog. And that's just like the last thing you would do if you just really didn't get there. So you have, and I guess maybe people don't know, but 2 dupe frogs is a combat lock. They can't declare an attack at all if there's 2 dupe frogs. Substitute says all frogs other than him, I guess all frogs you control, can't be destroyed by battle. So this is a combat lock, but they're able to hit. So if they have a DD Warrior Lady or a Glad, this is weak. But if they do have a DD Warrior or Glad, then this is strong. Either way, they're going to try to get rid of your dupe frogs and then just run over your Substode. It can't be helped. Depending on how bad your hand is, you're able to get another Substode, or maybe you have too many Substodes in hand. And then you have a Fishborg, or sorry, a Treeborn, and next turn you go for stuff. It gets crazy, you know. It always does. It's combo. But depending on the matchup, in those situations where I have to use Exodius, I might just go for a soft dupe block and do a flip-flop frog and just try to get there, like, if they can't break this, the next turn I flip up the flip-flop, I bounce anything they have, and then I have Treeborn, and I'm able to expand from there. From there, I can even maybe consider just destroying it all for Poison Draw Loop, something like that. You never know. You have to be creative in those situations where things don't work out. But that is where playtesting would really come into play, is these situations where you don't have the nuts, like you have this like pendulum swing. Like on the far left of the pendulum, you draw the absolute nuts, you can combo like crazy. On the far right, your hand is getting nowhere, so you're stalling and you're planning on maybe playing a control game. It's where you're kind of in the middle that you have to like play it safe, and that's what I'm trying to mention here is Dupe Frog is how you play it safe. You can go for your combo, and the step before your last step, the step before you run out of gas, instead of just going for it with one more draw and then losing, you just want to go ahead and make the soft dupe block and just stop there, because this can get there by itself depending on how bad their hand is. So it's like it's a better numbers game to just kind of see what they have if you didn't get there. And again, like you'll have a Treeborn in the situation, so you can extend past that point. Although, if your hand is, I can special summon a Swap Frog with Substode without Fishborg Blaster, but you do have a Pot of Avarice, then sometimes I'll go ahead and send everything, including the Dupe Frog. In that situation, I like to send everything, end on a Poison Draw, or sorry, end on a Dupe Frog. So I'll have, I would keep a Poison Draw or Swap in deck, so that when I use Pot of Avarice, my deck after Pot of Avarice will be 3 poisons, 3 swaps, and nothing else. So you'd go through every swap, get all the Substodes out. You're not going to draw a Substode. Put all the poison draws away, and then when you Pot of Avarice, hopefully you don't draw them. Hopefully you draw a Fishborg Blaster or something else. But if you don't, you can just stop here. And then your opponent doesn't even know how good your hand is at that point. Maybe you just need another normal summon. I guess you could potentially discard this for like a swap or something and save your hand, like bring it back because you have a fish board you need to discard or something. I don't know. Stuff like that doesn't happen. You basically never sack the substode. It's just basically never correct. Okay. So that's just a really big important point, something you need to keep your mind open. I said like 2 or 3 of probably 1,000 situations where you want to hold back the dupe. But the important thing is you don't just assume you're going to combo. You don't always get there in this deck. The strength of the deck is knowing when to pull it back and just dupe block. Soft or strong dupe block. Alright. I was considering doing a full demonstration, but that might be a different video. One thing, I guess I'll just do a quick demonstration of the stable board you make. So the idea is you have a substode, and you did your whole thing with an Exodius in hand, a Thunder Dragon in hand. Basically everything's in the grave, except for, let's just say everything went perfect, and you just discarded your hand, or a lot of cards in your hand, to send back all your Fishborgs, and then you summon them onto the field. Let's find that third Fishborg. We need that too. Okay, so this is kind of like how the end of your draw goes. You have one Exodius, and I guess that's an important thing to bring up, is you don't just slam your Exodiuses, because ideally you only use one. You extend with just spells, use one Exodius to like stitch everything together, and then you'll have 2 Exodius, one to reset everything at the end of your turn, and then a third that you keep in your hand for the second turn. So let's just assume that that's what's going on. That's usually how it goes down. We'll have a banished Exodius that got used, and then we'll have a second Exodius in hand. And for example purposes, our entire deck's in our grave. So in this situation, we're going to set the Imperial Iron Wall. So let's just put it face down. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that. Imperial Iron Wall. Put it face down. We're assuming we discarded one of our Thunder Dragons to get these guys out. So everything's good. So we Exodius, and we take every single monster in our deck. We don't get to pick. Every single monster goes back. Let's go ahead and put these out of the way because I'll show you that in a sec. Because everything goes back. Graveyard. Deck. So we have a Thunder Dragon in hand. These are technically in the deck. So we can discard the one we have in hand to get the Thunder Dragons. Shuffle as much as you want. It doesn't matter. You're gonna dig in here so many times. But yeah, so this is kind of the setup. You have your Thunder Dragons, yeah, with your Imperial Iron Wall. So we're gonna go ahead and just sack this Exodius for, in case I sometimes forget, so I'll just put the Treeborn in first. We need a level 2 non-tuner. We need a level 5 non-tuner. And then we'll go ahead and sync these together. 2, 5, and 1 for a Stardust. You guys, if you've been on my channel, you've seen this board 100 times. Yeah, so this is kind of worst case scenario, and that's something I did want to show off, where this is our hand, right? We need this Exodius for next turn, and obviously we're not going to discard it. But we want 2 more monsters to make the strongest board we can. So we're just going to go ahead and discard both of these Thunder Dragons for 2 separate times for 2 Fishborgs. And we'll go ahead and, I like to keep everything kind of organized together. So actually I like to put the Stardust over here. Flip-flop. Dupe Frog. Dupe Frog. Okay, so our deck is nothing but monsters. Shuffle, doesn't matter. This is worst case scenario where you hardly got there, but all you're going to have in hand in this worst case scenario is just an Exodius, but this is what you need. And again, that's not worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is this is your third Exodius, and you don't search for the flip-flop. You just keep the Exodius in play and hope that they can't get rid of it. That's only if you're really desperate or you misplay, and it happens. But yeah, so flip-flop uses effect. Okay. So your opponent needs to break this. It's pretty hard. There are plenty of ways to break it, but the point is everything's completely loaded. if they break this, you get to kind of still do stuff next turn because you have your swap frogs in deck. To go infinite, you need to face up Imperial Iron Wall, which I can't see with the glare. It doesn't matter. This is Imperial Iron Wall. It's fine like that. Okay. Face up Imperial Iron Wall, Exodius, Fishborg not in your grave, so in play, and then swap frogs in deck, which we have 3 swap frogs in deck right now. Okay. So this is infinite. They can break this entire board, which is hard to break. You know, you have 3 cards that cause you a combat lock. You have a clock with flip-flop, and it's hard to target face downs generally. Anything that can target like face downs, like something like Highest, the most played card in the format and one of the single best cards in the format, doesn't do anything to this board. Maybe they could brain control, but if they brain control Stardust, then they can't attack. Lots of things. So there are ways to break it. They can extend their entire hand to breaking your board, but that's not really the point. The point is you're trying to protect the setup. So yeah, we're gonna assume they don't break it. So everything's going great. You activate the Imperial Iron Wall on your turn, at the end of your opponent's turn, because they might have a Solemn. If they do have a Solemn, it doesn't matter. That doesn't stop you. I suppose it could with the Exodius, but the cost is to send everything else back. So, and they would pay half their life, so you could just hit them. Beside the point. So yeah, I think we draw a swap frog here. I think I already peeked. Yeah, that's not the worst thing in the world. So let's just say they have 1 back row. We're gonna flip-flop frog, send back all their monsters, set or not, doesn't matter, because we have I guess it would only be 3 monsters for a Unifrog. If they only have 1 back row, this is still worth it. Just go ahead and poke the Unifrog to destroy their 1 back row. You know, hit with Stardust, whatever. Don't hit with a Substode because they might have a Book of Moon or something, and if you swung, then you can't flip summon him. Simple stuff. But yeah, so this clears out your back, so you can poke through the back row. You have Stardust protection with Imperial Iron Wall, so many things don't work. Unifrog gets to clear out if they have an MST or something and they're hoping for you to mess up, then Unifrog will get rid of it. But you're just trying to protect your Iron Wall. And then if you're free and clear, but you've already used your battle phase, then this is kind of what I like to do. I'll swap frog, send a dupe, get back the Unifrog. Just go ahead and get this to clear the board, because all you're trying to do is make room. Kill this dupe frog for your flip-flop. And I only add these because you know they're there. Like you're just getting back the last thing you put back. So here it's like if they had a trap dust shoot, they'd be able to hit you, but hopefully you poked, and you can play around stuff. You just have to kind of like pretend. But yeah, so now you have what you need. Stardust, like if you couldn't clear all the back row and you still wanted to go for it, Stardust is kind of soft protecting you. So you can't, like if they had 3 back row, you can still go for it, because like if they have oppression, Stardust will protect you in this situation. But yeah, so we're just going to start discarding stuff. Sorry. You always want to discard the swap frogs, because you want to get them back in your deck. But all you're doing now is getting Fishborg out of your grave. And Exodius. So this is the infinite. This card plus these 3. So Exodius happens. And this is the situation I want to show. So this was all building up to, I just showed step by step because this is what you need to see. But the worst case scenario is, a bad scenario. It's not worst case scenario. It's still okay. But a bad scenario that comes up is you have to discard your Thunder Dragon. So say you want to play around Trap Dust Shoot. Unfortunately, this is correct. Is just get rid of the Thunder Dragon. If they didn't set a back row at all, great. But ideally, you're able to end your turn with this in hand. So when you play the Exodius, you go ahead and pull up the Thunder Dragon, because the Thunder Dragon is how you +1 every turn. But if you couldn't, if you had to go down to nothing, then you can have all 3 Thunder Dragons in your grave, and it'll still work out. It's still infinite. It's just a little bit more annoying. So yeah, we're gonna send everything back, including we don't need multiple Fishborgs because we have Iron Wall. This thing can't get crowed now, and that's everything. So we send everything back, and that's shuffled, whatever. So here's what we do. Activate swap, return this to the hand. So this is our banish, let's get rid of that. I usually like to keep my hand face down because these cards don't matter. I don't care what I have here. So this is my hand, is Exodius. Here, we want to tribute both of these to Substitoad. In this situation, what you want to do, so I guess let's do it for real. So you're not going to get rid of both of these, you're just going to get rid of one. So let's just do Swap Frog. what you want to do is you want to get everything that you can out, because all you're trying to do is draw Thunder Dragon. So we need to get one Poison Draw out. We need to get one Swap Frog out. And then everything else we're just going to send. So when we summon this, summon Swap Frog, summon Swap Frog, uses effect, send Substone. Send a frog, send a frog, send a frog, send a frog. Hey, look at that. So that now there's no frogs in the deck. So this maximizes our odds of drawing Thunder Dragon. So let's just go ahead and get that Poison Draw that we didn't send away. Swap Frog, send Poison Draw. So now what do we have? We have a 1 or a 3 out of 7 chance, so almost a 50% chance of drawing the Thunder Dragon. So we'll shuffle. Let's see what the real odds are, but realistically, you'll just probably draw one. If you don't, worst case scenario, you have to do this, I guess, until you have exactly 3 cards in your deck. So you have to do this exact same sequence 4 more times, worst case scenario. So let's see how lucky we get. I guess if I got unlucky, I'll just pretend I got there. But okay, we didn't get there. So that's in our draw hand. So this is our hand. Let's do it one more time. So right now we have 3 Thunder Dragons and 3 non-Thunder Dragons in our deck. Let's show you how infinite this is. So we don't want to just slam the Exodius to do another step. So for the next step, we need to discard something, and I usually discard a frog because it's free. Let's get this Fishborg out. This swap has not used his bounce effect yet, so now we're good. Go ahead and summon the Exodius. Send everything back. Alright. Send it back. So let's not shuffle yet because that kind of helps save time. Return it. Let's just discard. Sorry. Swap Frog, send the Substone. We want these 2 safe, so let's just take them to the side. Send, 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 send. Okay. Poison Draw. Swap Frog. So obviously before you draw, you shuffle, but it should be 50% chance. If I don't get it here, I'll just do it one more time before I, save time for the sake of the video. But sometimes it happens where you just, you have to just do the loop a couple extra times. Send the Poison Draw. Draw. Look at that. 50% chance we got it. So right away, just go ahead and send that Thunder Dragon. Look at that. Nothing but grave recurring synchros in the deck now. Doesn't matter if we don't have to play the shuffle because everything's infinite at this point. Alright. So now we have what we want. We want to go ahead and start our infinite draw. So let's get this Fishborg out of the grave, and now we have a Thunder Dragon to discard. Get that Fishborg out of the grave. This swap still has not bounced yet, so it's safe. Exodius. We have a Thunder Dragon in hand, so I usually just skip over these and send back everything. So that sends back everything. We'll discard this Thunder Dragon to get that, so 1 stays in the grave. Okay, so you guys kind of get that. So now, this open information Thunder Dragon, I usually just keep like this, so, hey, I'm doing it. You guys get it. So, we still don't really have to shuffle. We're going to be drawing soon, but you don't want to not shuffle and cheat. So, use the swap, send the Exodius. So now we'll send both of these with Substone, like, You guys get it. Poison Draw. Swap Frog. So now we are starting the infinite draw loop. And this is kind of worst case scenario because in this fake example, I pretended like I drew through my entire deck. So every single spell in my deck is in my grave. That's not how it usually goes down. Sometimes you just have some spells. Maybe they were here to bluff for like MSTs and stuff with the Imperial Iron Wall. But yeah, so we'll see how this actually plays out. Okay, so we're actually shuffled now. Okay, so this Swap Frog sends Poison Draw. We draw a legitimate card. We don't have to look. It doesn't matter. All right, so Thunder Dragon, discard. Get the Fishborg. Our grave is now one loaded draw with 2 Thunder Dragons. Send Exodius. This swap has not been used to bounce yet. So we'll send Thunder Dragon to the hand, keep 1 in grave, put these 2 to the deck. Okay, so if you're confused at all right now, pause, rewind, rewatch this part. This is a really important part because I'm now going to just do it. Maybe I'll narrate, maybe I won't. So let's go ahead and go. So we'll return this. Both of these. You're searching your deck, so it doesn't matter. So just both of those. Draw a card. Draw a card. So I'll do these simultaneously, but the actual sequence is you're discarding Thunder Dragon, special summoning Exodius. So discard that. For this, special summon Exodius, this to the hand, these to the deck, this engrave. Okay, return. Sack. Draw. Oh, wrong order. Draw. There you go. Boom. Sequence is you're discarding Thunder Dragon first, Fishborg, Exodius comes in to the hand, to the top of the deck. And remember, this goes to hand because you have an open information Thunder Dragon in your hand. Return. Boom. Draw. Boom. Boom. So hopefully this is explained enough for you guys and explained enough for your opponent. This is only if they make you play it out. I'm not sure if... I think if it's open information infinite, I'm not sure what the rules are for that, but my ideal is I'll be able to do this quickly. Like, I don't have to explain it to my opponent. I can just start doing it. Obviously, I'm going to be polite. But there's actually nothing in the game except for Herald of Orange Light, which even then, you can protect yourself with Stardust. Boom. Oops. To the grave. Bounce. Draw. I did it again. Draw. Discard. So this is infinite. You're plussing 1 every time because of Thunder Dragon's +1. And I like to have this space open just so I can slide up and down. If I practice this more, I think I'd be able to do it like you see those middle school kids stacking cups. But we're still getting there. Okay. So now you kind of want to pay attention to where you are in your deck. There's always draw. You're going to draw down to your last card. Boom. So here, this is an important step. If you automatically keep going, you'll lose from drawing yourself out. But this is where you want to be. This is your hand. You know, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 cards. Okay. So here, instead of discarding the Thunder Dragon, I discard Death Frog, the other level 5 in the deck, for the Fishborg. Special summon Exodius, just like we've been doing, but instead of the +1 from Thunder Dragon, we're going neutral with Death Frog just to reload it back into the deck. So now we're sending back 3 cards. I'll do it face up. Doesn't matter at all. Thunder Dragon, so this technically goes to the deck, but we'll discard 1 to keep it in the grave. Return the Exodius. So now we have the first non-infinite draw loop play. So we're going to sack the swap because we want to keep the tuner for Death Frog. Synchro into level 6. Go into my budget Brionac. Okay, so now you have Brionac. You flip-flop Frog at the end of your turn. So any monsters they have are gone. They're in your opponent's hand. If you couldn't do that, if you had to like bank on the Exodius not dying, then they might still have monsters. So in this case, you take one of your 20 cards and discard it to bounce their stuff. If they happen to have background that whole time you were comboing with Stardust protection, then now okay, let's just go ahead and bounce their back row. So let's just say hypothetically they had 2 more back rows, so we'll just discard 2 cards. And again, you want those to be frogs. It just makes things easier if you discard frogs. And you could do the Thunder Dragon, but it's easier for me to just keep track of the Thunder Dragons with sorry, actually no. In this case, you do want to not just discard frogs. You want to discard a plague. And these shouldn't be in the deck. They should be in the grave. Okay. So in here, we're discarding at least 1 for plague. I guess in theory, you wouldn't have to bounce anything with Brionac, and then you would just not take your +1 here in this next step. But we want this plague in the grave, and that's the point. You drew your plague, now it's in the grave. That's where you're at, however you got to do it. But yeah, so here, fictionally, every single card, no matter what they had, it's in your opponent's hand. So now we can do the next step. Discard this Thunder Dragon. Good old Fishborg. We're actually using it for its purpose again. To synchro. Brionac a water. Look at us. Best synchro in the game. At least for Edison. Happens to be a water. So we'll make Urbellum. Urbellum's only function in this deck is his name happens to be X-Saber. He's a level 7, so you can make him out of Brionac. And he's an Earth non-tuner for Gottoms. So let's just go ahead and top deck any card. Doesn't matter. At this point, technically your cards should be face down, but it's not going to matter. So we're top decking a card for Plague. And we'll go ahead and synchro. So we have Imperial Iron Wall, so Plague doesn't get banished, it goes back to the grave. So you can do all this combo stuff with Plague, it just gets a little more tricky. The game that I played on stream where everyone was making fun of me, I had to do it with Plague because I messed up. But it's possible. So I was able to do the entire thing you guys saw here, which I memorized and I can do really quickly. I had to figure it out right then with Plague. But it was possible, and I did it, so... Plague is good, and you can make things happen just with Imperial Iron Wall and Plague. It's almost identical. But yeah, so here we'll go ahead and make this Gottoms. Alright, so at this point, stars doesn't matter. So, I guess it's technically cheating, but I'll just scooch him out of the way. Maybe I'd even pull out the poison draw first just to get him out of the way so it's not cheating or something, but I like to keep the stuff that's not going anywhere off to the left. So stars can go. It doesn't matter. We need 3 spots to do our stuff. So we don't even need to do poison draw right now. We'll get a swap, not send anything, we just need him to bounce. We'll discard anything, a frog, ideally. Discard a frog for our Fishborg. And look, all the pieces are here. So now we Exodius. So we have a Fishborg in play, so we don't have to worry about that shuffling back. Swap has a bounce, so we're good. Send everything back. Boom, 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 boom. This goes to the hand. We still have an open information one. So we'll keep this one in the grave. And these go to the deck. Okay, that should be everything. Let's double check. Yep. Okay, so this is our deck now. These go back to the extra deck. Okay. So let's go ahead and bounce this back. We have all our open information stuff. This is our deck. So here we want to sack both of these. And I just like to do infinite draw loop again. It's just way easier to just be pushing yourself to the highest step so that when you're collapsing it back down, you don't get confused. But yeah, I'll shuffle here because whatever. And I only really want to do the poison draw loop here because I used cards to bounce for Brionac. Yeah, so we'll send this. Draw a card, doesn't matter what it is. Do the little thing you guys just watched. Maybe I can do it real quick this time. I find this part pretty meditative, so it doesn't matter that my opponent's butt hurt. Which they probably will be. If they're making you play it out, they probably are. And that's the whole point of this video really is to demonstrate, like, I can do this faster if I'm not talking. But it's just to demonstrate, like, here's how you do it, because they might make you do it. Like, you obviously have to demonstrate you can do it. But I want it to be open information that this is infinite and basically unlosable at this point. Draw again. Okay, so we're back where we were. So again, we're not going to take the +1 with Thunder Dragon in this situation because we want to make more synchros. So we're going to discard our Death Frog again. Hey, it was the last card we drew. Boom. For Fishborg. Summon Exodius. Send back. Everything. Right, we already did that. This is our deck. We need that. Bounce. For the Death Frog. Synchro into Brionac again. Discard for Fishborg. Look at that. Level 7. Okay. Okay, so that was the draw loop is concluded. We did it once up to Brionac, discarded for Brionac, and then we made our Gottoms because you want to escalate into Gottoms. And then we finished our draw loop on our first discard. So now we have enough cards to discard every card in their hand. So, you know, we're assuming that we blew something up with the Unifrog. Maybe they didn't plus. So all you need to do is do this 5 times. It could be 6 times, but it just depends. Every time you do it, if I remember correctly, I think you have to discard 2 cards and then a +1 from Thunder Dragon. So for every single discard you do, you need 2 cards, and then your loop. So we have enough. Okay. So maybe sometimes you'll stop yourself, and this is a part you need to practice, but you'll stop yourself and say, okay, well, he can top deck, like say they discarded an Auralass, he can top deck a Phantom of Chaos. So I don't even know what you would do in this situation. If you're afraid of their top decks, is the point I'm trying to make, then maybe you'd kind of want to sculpt your hand because they can do something here. That would be, I guess Phantom of Chaos doesn't do anything because of Imperial Iron Wall, luckily. But say you're afraid of their top deck, you kind of want to sculpt your hand. So you don't want to just like send everything and then end back on your board with no cards in hand. So sometimes you'll just go ahead and reset with your Poison Draw loop just to get back to something stable. Because you don't have to go crazy infinite again on their next turn because they're going to draw 1 card. So you can pop it with Unifrog, or you can bounce it with Flip Flop, or you can bounce a Brionac. Like, there's plenty of things to do. But so I'm sure a lot of you guys have checked out by now, but let's just go ahead and demonstrate this because this is educational for anyone who cares. But we have enough cards in hand to do it, so we're going to do it. So first we do the first discard. You discarded 1 card. I wish I had something to keep track with. 1 card's been taken care of. So we're going to do 5 times. So our field's open again. We have plenty of cards in hand. We want to get this Swap Frog in play, so let's discard frogs. So that's 1 card discarded. Sack this for a swap. That's 2 cards discarded for Fishborg. Exodius. Okay, so now we send back everything. All these extra deck cards. We have a Thunder Dragon in hand. Everything goes back. Okay. So we're back to where we were, where we have the regular draw loop and a Death Frog in grave, and then the 2 cards we discarded. These are back in the extra. Open information Thunder Dragon. Okay. So do the same thing again. Death Frog. Brionac. Discard Thunder Dragon. So that's the 3rd card, but it's a Thunder Dragon, so it hardly counts. For Urbellum. Discard card number 2. Okay, so we want to go ahead and keep going. Let's just organize our frogs to the top of our hand so we don't have to think. Okay, that's all the frogs. Okay, so that's 2 cards discarded. Oops. Discard. Fishborg. Sack that for Swap Frog. And then we want to discard another frog. Fishborg. So that was 2 non-Thunder Dragons. See, I was right. It's 3 cards total, but 2 non-Thunder Dragon cards every time you want to do it. So we send everything back. Thunder Dragon, these 2. Okay. Return. Yeah. Death Frog. Brionac. Discard. Fishborg. Urbellum. You discard 3 cards. Okay, sack that for swap. Discard another frog. A little tedious, but this is the way to do it. To the hand, onto the deck. Okay. So now we get our Deaths. Synchro to Brionac. Thunder Dragon. Urbellum. You discard 4. So if we Unifrogged, we only need to discard 1 more card, so let's just do it that way. And it kind of works out with our hand. Because we're not just getting rid of frogs. Like, it's nice to get this kind of stuff in the grave and stuff. But really, all you want is Substodes in hand, and probably like a Thunder Dragon and Exodius. Like, these are the kind of cards you want in case they magically break your board. But we just want to get these back in the deck, so we're trying to end with our grave full of stuff, so when we summon the last Exodius, we can make our stable board again. So, let's do that. Yeah. Sorry. So we'll discard dupe for Fishborg, sack the Fishborg for a swap, discard dupe for a Fishborg. Now's our chance to Exodius. We have a Thunder Dragon, so let's send everything back. Thunder Dragon to hand. Okay. Boom. Sack this for a Desfrog. This is the last Urbellum that we'll make here in a sec. So Fishborg. So you discard the 5th card. So now they have no cards. You played around any backer they had. You know, they could have done stuff. They could have booked you or something. But if they booked Substode, you could flip summon it. There's very, very few things they could have done that would have stopped this. And if they did stop this, it wouldn't have like won them the game. And that's kind of the point. So yeah, we discard all your cards. These are the cards we have in hand right now. So we want to go ahead and get back to where we were. We don't need these Fishborgs at all. So we'll discard a Fishborg for Fishborg. Let's do it again real quick because who cares. Sack that. Swap. Okay. Exodius, send everything back. 1, 2 synchros to the hand. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So our deck is stacked again. We're back to where we started. So you could infinite draw loop and do it all forever. Whatever. This is the hand we're looking at right now. We're going to make another Stardust. Let's go ahead and bounce this back. We want to go and discard the Fishborg. We want a level 2 non-tuner. So Desfrog, discard a Thunder Dragon. For Fishborg. Let's make our Stardust again. Came right back. Okay, so we need to discard 2 cards. Easy peasy. We'll do Plague and Sub. So let's just do Sub first. Fishborg, search for dupe. Discard Plague. Fishborg, sack it. And don't forget to send your Treeborn, because you never know. Dupe Frog. Okay, so our deck is loaded full of crap we don't care about. Most importantly, we have a Unifrog, and I guess Flip-Flop is useless here because we want to keep the Gottoms. You could just sack the Gottoms at the end and not make the 5th. So like if they have the 6th card or for the 5th card, just sack the Gottoms and then get the Flip-Flop if you think that'd be more useful. This just kind of like saves steps so that if they make you do it every turn, you don't have to do it every turn. And you kind of want the 3100 beater that you already made earlier to OTK the next turn. So yeah, this is where you'd end up. You have Dupe Block back, hard Dupe Block with a Substone making it extra hard. Imperial Iron Wall, Stardust, and Gottoms. If they hold a card back, you just discard. You can just Gottoms right then, or just do your loop stuff. If they have a spell or trap, then you could just make Brionac. Same thing if they have a set monster, just make Brionac, and you're infinite, so you can just make a huge board. And I'll make another video explaining the OTKs. I have a whole strategy for not going infinite. So Imperial Iron Wall isn't there. You draw through your whole deck, and you do limited plays that don't go infinite with Iron Wall. But with Iron Wall, there's nothing you can't do for the most part. You can put everything back, like to your hand, grave, deck, field, whatever. So the sky's the limit. And there you go. This second portion of the video is super long, I understand. But I know people wanted to see the combo done, explain the thought processes. I do need to make one where I demonstrate drawing through, and there's a chance that can fail, so that might be like a long video where I draw out multiple hands and then just stop at the stable board and just scoop it up, because you guys can see now this is what you do with the stable board, and then I'll show you how to get there in another video. So thanks for sticking it with me. A few of you cared to ask for this, so I appreciate that. I'm glad anyone cares that I'm making this convoluted video explaining everything. And yeah, tune in. I'm going to make at least 2 more, maybe 3 more videos. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. Play Gottoms Frogs. It's crazy.